Be happy at the opportunity to interact with you all, and I'm very grateful to the Infosys Foundation for this opportunity. I'm indeed very grateful to General Kulkarni as well as Infosys Foundation people who have made this possible. And what I want to talk about in another half an hour or so is about how to use common sense in solving scientific problems. So I will not talk too much about some particular area of science. I will touch upon some aspects of nanotechnology, but not go very deep into it. So this talk is not focused on some area of science, but more about how do we do science. What is the role of common sense in solving scientific problems? What is the meaning of learning? What is creativity? So it's more about the process than about the end product. So we start by saying that, look, even though our education is compartmentalized because it's in terms of teaching chemistry, physics, biology, mathematics, and so on, the solution to real problems does not lie in only knowing chemistry or physics or mathematics or biology or engineering or any of those. So we look at what the real problems of society are, which are global problems, and these are, you ask anybody across the globe, any scientist, they will give you the same problems. So you can call them the usual suspects of science today. So even though the dimensions of problems in different countries may be different, but look at what are the challenges. Challenges are energy, water, health, environment, food, climate, manufacturing, information, connectivity, sustainability, security, and happiness. So what that means is, in order to solve any of these problems, it is not enough to know only chemistry, physics, mathematics, or engineering, but we have to work together. So we have to know a whole lot of these things, being interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary, in order to address these real issues. In fact, there is a difference between being interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary, and often both of them are required. So if you do not know the difference between interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary, please look up Google, because this is a very useful information. So next thing that we want to talk about is, see, in education, in problem solving, we need both intelligence but also creativity. So the question is, what is creativity? Creativity today is connecting different domains of knowledge which have not been connected before. What that means is, if I can find out, how can I use tools of chemistry, physics, biology into social sciences, for example, or tools of social sciences in solving scientific problems, that would be an example of creativity. So basically, you produce new knowledge by using the techniques, the tools, the knowledge of different disciplines. But in order to do that, we should be able to understand what has been learned in different domains and be able to use all of them for solving problems. Now I'll give you a very, very quick introduction to nanotechnology. So in the future, there are 3 or 4 big themes of the future and their convergence. So these 3 or 4 big themes are, well, biotechnology or bio or life sciences of all kinds, together with nanotechnology and information and communication technologies. So convergence of these 3 technologies will produce wonders. So you just think about it, let's say suppose you have a small sensor, right? First of all, let me say what nano actually means. So a nanometer means a billion times smaller than a meter. Right? So if you typically look at the diameter of a human hair, well, it depends on whose hair, but typically if you look at diameter of a human hair, an average kind of thing, a nanometer would be 10,000 times smaller than that. So it's indeed very small, a billion times smaller than a meter. And if you manipulate material at that scale, if you use material at that scale, then it is called nanotechnology. So if we understand the behavior of matter on that scale, if we manipulate it, manufacture it, fabricate it, use it, there would be nanotechnology. So what is special about nano things? Let's say it is a nanoparticle. A nanoparticle will have diameter somewhere between 1 nanometer and 100 nanometers. So question you can ask is, what is so great about this range of diameters? Let's say 1 nanometer to 100 nanometers. Well, it turns out that in this range, the properties of matter depend on size. They don't depend only on material. For example, if you say, so what is the color of gold? So we know the color of gold is golden. Right? It doesn't matter if you take this bigger ring or that bigger ring or whatever. It will always be the same color. But if you made a gold particle, which is 1 nanometer or 10 nanometer, they will have two different colors. And similarly, their conductivity, their electronic properties, their chemical properties as catalysts, their physical properties, magnetic properties, all of these properties would change as a function of size. So you think about how revolutionary that is for science, because we always thought about properties as belonging to a material. But here, properties are not only belonging to a material, but belonging to a size. So you can make all kinds of properties, you can tailor right kind of properties for application by simply changing the size rather than changing the material. So this is the promise, this is the basis of nanotechnology. So nanotechnology, unlike let us say chemical engineering or mechanical engineering, not a single subject, because no matter who you are or will become, maybe a chemist, maybe a physicist, maybe a material scientist, electrical engineer, whatever, it doesn't matter. All of us can actually work in nanotechnology. So nanotechnology is all pervasive. It impacts everything that we do, no matter what our nature of business is, no matter what our domain of knowledge is. I'll give you some examples. So the impact of nanotechnology, of course, we want to shrink the size of transistor or the chip, for example. Not the chip, but how many transistors go per unit centimeter square, and that determines the speed of computing. So what is the difference between, this Pentium, base 5, 8, whatever, right, different chips as they keep evolving. The difference basically is the density of elements per unit area that you can put in. So what that means is you have to miniaturize everything. Today the size of a transistor, anybody knows what is the smallest size of a transistor that goes into commercial manufacturing? Everybody knows transistor, right? Transistor, is an element, is an electronic unit, right, which is necessary for making any electronics. So capacitor, transistor, all of these are the building blocks of electronics. When the transistors were first invented, their size was in millimeter. Millimeter to micrometer, hundreds of micrometers to micrometer, down to hundreds of nanometers, thousands of nanometers. Do you know what the size today is? It compares with the size of a virus, right? So below 20 nanometers. So, to make something without defects of that size has been a huge technology challenge. And our further progress in shrinking the size and enhancing the speed and efficiency of electronic devices It depends on how small can we make them. But that's where the challenge is. So, you can think of what the challenge would be even 5 or 10 years down the road. The challenge would be that now the size is so small, if it shrinks any further, you get into quantum effects. So it's not classical mechanics anymore which governs the behavior. So we all know this, this little matter of uncertainty, right? We know that when things become very small, they become uncertain. You can't really predict their behavior 100% of the time. So that's one of the great challenges of nanoelectronics. The revolution, all this while, 7 decades, we have been enhancing the capability and speed. The question now is whether that would continue 10 years down the road. Would you need a completely different technology that is based on molecules rather than this kind of technology we have now? Being impacted in a huge way, I would say extraordinary, exceptional way by the rise of nanotechnology. Give you an example. Most of the medicines that we consumed until 10 years ago had a particle size, the soluble drugs or whatever emulsions that you had, they had a size in microns. But today, a whole lot of these formulations which are found the same material, but you make smaller particle size, dissolve it in the drug, it is much more efficient. It can be metabolized much faster, it can reach more organs faster, and its utilization is much higher, right? Also now, while people are making these drug delivery platforms, these drug delivery platforms are small particles, so that this is controlled delivery. So the amount of drug which is needed and where it is needed, it would be delivered only there. That's very important. For example, if you are fighting cancer, right? So there is a general drug, so you gulp it down, whole lot of it goes everywhere in the body. Before it kills cancer, it may kill you. So therefore, it is necessary that we take small amount of drug, but make it targeted, meaning it goes only where it is needed, and not affect all the different organs. So that promise that is certainly possible, targeted delivery, controlled delivery, and so on, and that is what is happening here. Energy, in fact, if you look at solar cells, the photovoltaic cells that are being used today, they have elements of nanotechnology in terms of miniaturized size of the elements that go in there, the nanomaterials that go in there to increase efficiency. So anyway, the point here is that nanotechnology is all pervasive. Okay, even though we may not recognize that we are dealing with nanotechnology in a particular product, it may be there. So it's not that the function of the product has changed by using nanotechnology. It serves the same function it was serving 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but it has become more efficient. It may have become cheaper. So that's the whole point. So let's look at actually things that have happened there. Now, one point which is very interesting, people ask, is nanotechnology something new? But not really. I mean, the matter of the fact is nothing is really ever new. The question, when you say, is some science new? You ask two questions. Do I understand the science? Can I control it? So even though there may be examples of nanotechnology earlier, and here are some examples. You see this, I don't know, here. Many people here have seen these, stained glass windows from old cathedrals, and the color of these windows, it comes from gold nanoparticles. But the same gold nanoparticle of different size makes different colors. Right? So just by changing the size of gold nanoparticle and melting it in a glass, you change the color. But you see, these colors are very vibrant colors. You cannot get them in paints, right? And so these colors, they basically come from nanotechnology, which was not understood, but it was basically a practice, right? So based on experience, by trial and error, by brute force, people made these windows, right? So now the question comes, well, any science may have been practiced in a different form long time ago, But if we did not understand it, meaning we could not control it, then it is not science. Right? It is a practice which is very good, right? But science basically means to understand and control, to design by choice, not by some random combination that you get. Right. Another thing about nanotechnology is that even though people may have been practicing it in different forms, there were no tools actually, there was no technology to deal with it. What that means is you could not see small particles. So, what you cannot see, you cannot control, you cannot make, and you cannot tell what you have made, right? So when you say rise of nanotechnology in recent times, it has been made possible because of new tools of technology that would allow us to see them, to manipulate them, and to use them. And this goes for all kinds of science, not just for nanotechnology. Right. So the ultimate promise of nanotechnology is that we should be able to assemble things atom by atom, which means that all those materials which do not exist today, they also called metamaterials, they are called intelligent materials. We are thinking about them. You see, when I was an undergraduate, there was an area of material science, where still is. Then people said, look, to appear that we have made some progress, we start calling it advanced materials. After that came smart materials. After that came intelligent materials. And so you often wonder whether you would get conscious materials next, maybe even wise materials or spiritual materials, right? Who knows? But because science has to keep inventing itself, maybe you have to package it in more and more attractive terms. For all our young people to take interest in it, to get attracted to it. So there are many of these materials, maybe I'll talk a little bit more about them later, saying, look, what is a smart material? Well, smart is like it senses the environment and does action appropriately, right? Intelligent material, or another way to describe it, and so on. So the promise of nanotechnology is can I assemble things atom by atom, create the right structure, right device, which has the right properties? We are still very far from there. However, this dream of nanotechnology is already happening in nature. So if you look at how nature assembles things, it can, in many cases, in fact, it happens on atomic scale to get that kind of precision, right? Because many things in nature, that's why it does it on very large scale, right? So the way things happen in nature, the way it happens in man-made technology. Man-made technology is a bad word to use because not gender neutral. So I would say, human-made technology is very different. But by understanding how things happen in nature, we can make better technology. Another thing I want to say is nanotechnology, even though people think of this as all high-tech, is not all of it is high-tech. In fact, like I said, it's in everyday life. I'll give you some examples. So let us look at 4 common examples. Actually, we can have a list of thousands of these examples. Now the example, the wrinkle resistant stain repellent threads or fabric. Actually, it comes because we are able to fuse a polyester fiber with a cotton fiber. Because you want it to be stain repellent, at the same time also want it breathable. Now you don't want to hang around with plastic. So sweat does not go out, air is going. So it's actually a combination of nanofibers of plastic with cotton. And so that makes it water repellent, at the same time breathable and this wrinkle free. So clearly, if you have a very small particle of drug, then this would penetrate the skin. Right? There are very small pores in the skin. We want to have the drug to be delivered under the skin. Then clearly we have to use very small particles or nanoparticles. So it increases the efficacy of these lotions, cosmetics, creams and so on. Now imagine, think about one company that has the largest number of nanotechnology patents. it is not in electronics. To give you some hint, it is in cosmetics, right? So it is L'Oreal, for example. So clearly nanotechnology is very widespread and it's under our skin, over our skin, in our hair, everywhere. If you look at sunscreen, for example. See, sunscreen that I grew up with, if you go to a beach, you put in this very gooey stuff and it is milky in appearance and people don't much like it. But if you use the small particles in the screen, then it becomes transparent. Now clearly people like transparent things as compared to this gooey, milky things, right? It also increases the efficiency of UV absorption by the sunscreen. And a whole lot of things. Basic point is that we may be using the same product over 40 years under the same name, but its formulation today may be completely different than what it was 20 years ago because of nanotechnology addition. And even though that's not recognized as such, we don't really know, it's the same cream, the same name, but what it was 30 years ago would be very different today in terms of efficiency, in terms of efficacy, in terms of cost and so on. Okay, now we wanted to talk a little bit about connecting different domains of knowledge and how does it generate new knowledge, or basically scientific common sense. Now this was one of the instruments that brought about revolution in nanotechnology. What is a revolution? What is the instrument? It's called an atomic force microscope, and using this you are able to see very small things. Now see, because unless you can see these small particles, you cannot do any nanotechnology. So first thing you need to do is characterize, look at these small things. And atomic force microscopy, scanning tunneling microscopy made that possible. So basically what is it, how does it work? And it's also one of these inventions that got a very fast Nobel Prize. So it was invented, you see, in 81, and Nobel Prize comes in 1986. Most people get a Nobel Prize for the work they did in 40s, but when they're in the 70s or 80s, then they are given Nobel Prize. So this is quite exceptional. So how does it work? You see, when you want to see something, you always think about seeing it through light, right? Because we say, well, if there is no light, you can't see. But question is, in a dark room also, you can see if there is a power outage, if there is a blackout. How does one see? One sees it by feeling, by touching. So similarly, if I'm blind, then I have to carry a stick and then poke it everywhere and then see things, right? So there are many different meanings of the word seeing. Now if you realize that to see small things, I can make a small stick and poke it everywhere and see through that stick, that is by mechanical means, then this could be another way of seeing. So if you translate that concept in technology, then you get something like this. This is called atomic force microscopy. Here is a little tapping stick, which is only a few micrometer in size. It's very fragile. So the thing that you want to see, you go there, you do tap, 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 move on, basically scan the surface, and then you can make a map of that surface, which is shown over there. Another principle, how do great discoveries happen in science? People often ask, because once a discovery is presented in the literature, it looks like, there is a linear logic to it, which means, this guy thought about it, and he cracked the problem and so on. Most of the science does not happen that way. It happens by serendipity, meaning by chance. But we see the serendipity favors only those who are prepared. So these are the two things. The lessons are that when something interesting happens, one should be looking for it, right? And one should recognize that something interesting is happening. Most of the time, people don't recognize that, and which is why I keep telling my students, when people start doing science, we also do science in your lab, high school lab and so on, and people are saying, no, I'm not getting the results which I am supposed to get, right? But those are the interesting experiments when you do not get the result, because those results anyway, even if you got them, then they're not any great use, because before you, about 3.5 million students have already verified it, right? So while if you verify it again, there is not great deal of wisdom in it. What you need to do is look at those experiments where if something interesting happens, where you do not get the result which is given in the book. And if you focus on that, then this is the chance that there's a little that iota of chance that one has to catch very strongly and pursue it. Right? So that's the trick. So that's why I keep saying there's no such thing as a failed experiment, because experiment is a reality. Right? Reality never fails. I mean, you cannot falsify reality. You just have to find out the reason for that reality, and that is science. So maybe I'll give you an example. This is something we are doing in my lab. So the background is like this. There are lots of things in nature like shark skin. They are very smooth. They do not foul up. They do not become dirty. Nothing sticks to it like Teflon, right? And the reason it happens is because on a microscopic level, they have, the skin actually looks like this. It has these triangular microscopic projections all over the skin, and bacteria cannot get a foothold on these sharp projections, so it remains very clean. Bacteria are not scared of sharp. They just cannot stick to the surface, and that is the reason it remains clean. So we wanted to actually replicate this structure in the lab. And one of my PhD students was working on it for 5 months. Basically, you make these structures by first creating a stem, which has replica of this structure, and then pushing it down very hard on a polymer or plastic, so you can recreate the same structure. Right, which was very good. This is the structure that he created by stamping, and unfortunately, right after stamping, the structure became like this. In other words, this pyramid is split into two, and it created the whole structure is destroyed, in a sense, right? So now the student actually, he was working on it for 6 months. He never talked to me. He used to throw away all these samples. Then I asked him, I said, what is happening with that? He said, sir, the experiment doesn't work. It failed. So that's how I got that term. I'm saying there's no such thing as a failed experiment. Right? So he was saying this experiment failed because he did not get the structure he wanted to get. Right? So for him it was a failure. So of course he says, sir, the experiment failed. So I tell him, don't call me sir. Then he says, yes sir. So that is how basically things work. Right? Now, so I said, look, tell me how it failed. They showed me these structures. But it turns out that the structure which was created here is even more useful than the structure that we wanted to create. Right? This is actually a very useful structure because it has a lot of nano channels which are spontaneously created, and they can be used for a whole lot of things like DNA diagnosis and so on. See, for DNA diagnosis, you have to stretch out the DNA molecule. When the DNA molecule flows through this channel, it gets stretched out and becomes linear. It opens up so you can read actually all the base pairs. So the question is, if you are focused very tightly on what you want to achieve, and if you discard everything that goes in between, then that's not very helpful, it's not very valuable, and nothing new will ever be done or discovered by that process. Well, here are some examples of great technology of nature. So he said, look, there is a lot of stuff we can learn from nature, and then if we understand that, then we can turn it into a technology which can be very useful. So some examples are, if you look at the colors of butterflies and feathers, they are exceptional colors. Those kind of colors you cannot get in synthetic paints. They are so vibrant. And so to understand actually how these colors can be manufactured. Similarly, if you look at lotus leaf, you put a drop of water on it, it rolls off like mercury. So this is called water repellent surfaces. If you make fabrics, paints, etc., which are water repellent, then this is a great thing. And all of this is related to nanotechnology. So I'll tell you how it is. If you look at this frogs and gecko, spiders, insects, they can grip the surfaces very strongly, but at the same time they can keep walking around. There is no human technology that produces a glue of this kind. which can grip strongly but can also move around, right? If you know this tape that we use to hang posters, once you use the tape, you cannot reuse it. It may grip strongly, but once you remove it, it's gone. You cannot move it around for the rest of its life. So you see, these are extremely important, interesting things one can learn from nature, and not just these. There would be millions of these things in terms of how the nature manufactures, about what are the mechanisms, materials, and so on in the nature. Well, actually, this stuff here, I don't know how many of you have read about it as to what makes a surface water repellent. Why does water does not hold on to a surface? How does it roll off? It's actually quite simple, and one clue is in the name of these surfaces, which are also called fakir effect. Now, fakir, what is a fakir? Is basically this guy, holy guy, who is sitting on a bed of nails, right? So there is a bed of nails, and the fakir or the holy man is sitting on the bed of nails. Similarly, on a surface which is water repellent, on microscopic level, there are a lot of nails which are coming out of the surface. They put a drop of water on that, the water drop does not touch the surface, it is riding on a blanket of air. So it is very similar to what happens if you take a very hot tawa and put a drop of water there. It will start jumping, it does not come in contact with tawa, this frying pan surface. So it is like it moves around, never coming in contact with the surface, so it's water repellent surface. But that happens because there is a blanket of vapor under the drop. In this case, there are these microscopic nails that provide the blanket of air on which the drop is riding. Right? So very interesting things, very simple things. But basically, to learn all of this, we have to be open. We have to go out and see what all amazing things that are happening in nature. Try to understand and have curiosity, learn from there, translate that into technology. This is much harder, to do, easier said than done. And clearly, much of the science that we deal with today, including the books, textbooks, it all comes from controlled labs. It all comes from, sitting in front of a computer or inside, a lab, but hardly ever going out in the nature and learning from there. There's another dimension of learning. If we use that, a lot of new things can be discovered. I'll give you another example from my own lab about thinking, out-of-box thinking, or what you may call creativity, or lateral thinking, and so on. So the essential idea is, well, no matter where I look, maybe I'm watching a movie, maybe I'm doing something else, some entertainment, Facebook, but I can actually get some ideas from all of this which are relevant for science. In this particular case, we wanted to make very small things which are complex. Right? For example, the Russian doll. See, you can make a Russian doll on millimeter scale is very easy, but if you make it on micron scale, micron is 1,000,000 times smaller than a meter. If I wanted to make a Russian doll on micron scale, I would need a lot of these modern tools, for chip making and so on. I would need few $1 million of funding to get the lab going and so on. Right? So how do I make very small things without using machine tools? This is one of the central problems of nanotechnology. Right? So if you think about, there was a movie in 1980s, Hollywood movie, very popular movie. It was called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I saw this movie in the 80s, but it didn't strike me until much later, when my daughter, who was a teenager at that time, was watching this movie, and I was trying to explain to her what this means, right? Then it occurred to me, if I wanted to make something small, all you have to do is make something big and shrink it. Right? It seems so simple. Anybody can do it. So the question is, well, how do you do it? Important thing is, if you can think something, you can always do it. To find a technology to do it is much easier than to think of an idea. So in this particular case, well, how do you miniaturize? So you start with the same object that you want to miniaturize, that you want to make on a small scale. You start with a bigger object, which is easy to make. Then what you do is you mold it with a gel. You know molding, everybody knows molding. So you put a gel around it, then remove the object, then you get a replica of this object in a gel. Then you dry the gel. When you dry the gel, it shrinks. So you get the same replica, negative of that in the gel. Then you make another replica with that replica and continue the process 5 times. Then you would go exactly that. So it shrink the object. Right, very easy. It can be done in a high school lab with very little resources. So it's like this in nanotechnology. As you reduce the dimensions by 1 order of magnitude, the cost of making it increases exponentially. So you can make things on 100 micron scale much easier, much cheaply than something on 10 micron scale. Then that you can make 10 micron much easier than 1 micron scale and so on. So you start with something which is big and then keep shrinking it. So here you go. So this actually shows the actual experiment. You say if you want to make something, a nut bolt or whatever it is on a small scale, then you make an object, a replica of an object, gel molding, gel drying, then make another replica and repeat the process. Right? Fantastic. So this example basically you want to illustrate the power of thinking out of box. So it's not that all our problems in science require understanding of deep science. It does not require for me to understand some theory of relativity or quantum mechanics or even microfabrication or any of that. Right? All it requires is think about it, you can do it. Okay, well, so from now on I would present some random thoughts which are related to the practice of doing science. And one of them, basically, I keep telling people that education, it does not equal courses, mugging up, the content, exams, grades, and degrees. Right? So clearly, we've always been thinking if it doesn't equal all of them, what does it equal? There's nothing left in education, is it? Education is not about the content that we have learned. Because this content that we have learned, everything I learned when I was in class 8, I don't remember by the time I'm in class 11. What I learned in class 11, I would not remember when I was doing undergraduate. And what I learned there, I had forgotten certainly after 4 years. When I again started teaching undergraduate courses, I had to relearn everything, every single line. I can assure you. Okay, whatever we learn now would be lost. And the only way that we would learn is what we would relearn on our own will remain with us. Right? Nothing else will remain with us. No matter how good your teachers are, whatever we have not learned by ourselves will not remain with us. This is an eternal law. So therefore, it is very important that we understand this principle. There is no exception to this. Not Einstein, not Newton, nobody. Right? There is no such thing as intelligence which retains whatever without using it. So anything that say use it or lose it, right? And it's exactly like that. So it is the capacity to learn which is education, not the content of what we have learned already. Another thing I really want to discuss, you see, often in society, in everything we do, we don't like diversity. We like people who are like us. We also like people who believe in same things that we believe in. We like people that do same kind of science we do. Right? I've never seen any scientist value other science more than his own scientific domain. Must be a great exception. Now that clearly shows immaturity of mind, because if I'm a chemist, I keep saying chemistry is the most important thing in this world. Physics is not important. This is not important, right? We should never fall in that trap. They say, look, everything is important, and basically diversity is important, because I may be a chemical engineer, but whoever you are, has equal value as a chemical engineer. So now the question we want to pose in a more scientific term. Scientific term is, why is diversity important? Right? Because when you have diversity, not everybody is equal. Some are inferior, some are superior in doing a particular function. Right? Some can, we don't want every human to walk as fast as everybody else. We don't want everybody to be same size or same weight and so on, right? We don't want all our friends to be exactly like us. We want diversity. So the question is, why do we need diversity? When without diversity, we can do everything more optimally, more efficiently. So the reason is very simple in scientific terms. It has to do with the evolution, right? So if we had everybody was exactly the same, so no matter how efficient they are, when the circumstances change, when the environment would change, then all of them would disappear at the same time. It's like a business which has lost, if all our companies were doing exactly the same business, once the need for that business disappears, all of them will disappear at the same time. So therefore we need diversity, so that when there is a challenge, when there is a stress, when there is a challenge or bad times, right? Then everything doesn't fall at the same time. Some of us would survive, others would perish and so on, and the diversity actually guarantees that. On the other hand, optimality, which is basically doing things in the most efficient way, but everybody doing it the same way, okay, is bound to fail sooner or later. And this is shown by examples of societies, businesses, everything, right? So therefore, there is a scientific reason, just as it happens in nature, to basically have diversity, to value diversity, and not just a very hasty judgment, saying, no, everybody should be only doing electronics, everybody should be doing only IT, everybody should be doing only management, marketing, and so on, right? Okay, now we come to this point about, people always want to know about the future, right? They all want to know what's going to happen to me tomorrow. That's why astrology becomes so greatly important in our lives. We keep reading these weekly forecasts or whatever. We all want to know how it's going to look like in the future. Problem with predictions about future, even with the place people, we can't be very certain about the future. So we take the best guess, and predictions about the future it's not even clear that if you have experience in that area for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, that you would make a better prediction. That is not guaranteed when predicting about future, because having experience of 30 years has an advantage, but it also has a problem, that is, one is highly conditioned to think along certain lines. So you would only think in one way, because 30 years people have been telling you to think in a particular way. So therefore, the prediction about future becomes rather uncertain. So I want to talk about one example of that. That is, people who have been in business, in a particular business for 50 years, are still not able to predict the future. So here are the two big examples. There is company IBM. They had a lead in personal computing and personal computers. They were the leaders, but the top management, the top scientists of the company said that this has no future. The personal computing and personal computers have no future. Only the big mainframe computers have the future. Similarly, there was another company called Kodak, which were printing photographs, and their top management opined at some point that digital photography has no future. Now, these are actually wise people. They were old people. They have been in the business for many decades, but they were horribly wrong. And the reason they were horribly wrong is because the success of each of this business, the digital photography and personal computer and personal computing, they depend on each other. So if there is no personal computers, then you cannot have digital photography. But you cannot have personal computers unless you have a lot of applications like digital photography to run on them. So therefore, because there were neither personal computers nor digital photography, they thought, well, this cannot happen. So the message basically is that the development of a lot of technologies in science, it depends on each other. This is co-arising of technologies. So unless we are talking to other people who work in other technologies, other domains, we would miss the boat. Actually, India has missed the boat on many critical technologies, partly because of many reasons, but this being one of the reasons, saying that look, we don't easily talk to each other. So if I am chemist, I think I am the center of the universe, chemistry is the center of the universe, and nothing else matters. But nothing could be farther from truth. So therefore, no matter what we learn, please talk to other people, and that's the only way to be wise and be successful. Okay, so there are two principles of doing science. There are two fundamental principles of doing science which are not taught in textbooks. And I personally in my life, no teacher ever told me this. Right? No teacher ever told me this because A, teachers don't wish to be questioned. Or B, we don't want to look like fools because people ask too many questions, we may not know how to answer it. Third, that asking questions doesn't really work in exams. So in order to crack exams, we have to be sure about the shortcuts and we have to know what is going to turn up in the exam and not question it too much. Right? So because of these reasons, the two important concepts in science, which are in fact the backbone of science, are lost. What are these two concepts? The first one is that we ought not to believe anything unless it squares with our own experience, with our own logic. So no matter who says it, no matter if a great guru has said it, no matter if your teacher has said it, no matter if Einstein has said it, doesn't really matter. Unless you are verified yourself, unless you say, look, it makes sense, I have done some work on it, it makes sense, only then you are going to bet your hard-earned money on that and nothing else. The same principle, in fact, is enshrined in the motto of Royal Society. So Royal Society is a premium society, guardian of science, of modern science, and so they say, I don't know how it is said in Latin or Greek, I mean how it is pronounced. Nullius in verba means take nobody's word for it. Right? Of course, everything looks more attractive if you write it in Latin or Greek, right? Because people don't understand what it means anyways. But this is, is a fundamental principle of science. If we believe whatever people are telling us, which is good if you want to do a routine application, but if you want to do something new in science, that will never happen if you believe people. Other issue is we want profound science. Doing profound science means that we should look for falsification of the knowledge that exists. Okay, we not say, oh yeah, again proving same thing again and again has no meaning. What we have to do is we have to find out conditions under which it does not work. If we can find out those conditions, we understand the limits of what we know. Knowing the limits of what we know is the true knowledge. So if you know this is where the limit is, then you push this limit a little bit. That's how one discovers something new, something useful, something profound. So much of the science or the knowledge of any kind which is being done is what is called incremental. It means 1 million people have done it, I have also done it, okay, so I am also a scientist, right? But that is not being, good scientist, and certainly we need profound science which pushes the boundaries little bit, and this is what the country lacks. So even though we may be large number of scientists, but in order to do profound science, you have to question, and one should be willing to fail, take risks. There's another cultural element which in our education is completely missing. I see many teachers here, I see wise people. We have never told our students to say that look, it's perfectly alright to fail. Fail is such a horrible word. I mean, parents will come and kill us if we told them that, right? We cannot really say, look, it is alright to take risks and fail. The fact of the matter is, one, you cannot, after you get all the first ranks in every class, you would have learned nothing from it. right? Because success does not teach anything. One can learn from failures if one pays attention to it, right? So only way to succeed is to actually at some point take risks and fail, right? This is very important. Please, guys, listen to this, girls, right? Tell your parents, well, I'm trying, I'm going to take risks, not at this level, but once you get into, let's say, college and beyond college, it's very important. You want to start your own company, a startup, convert your technology into money, and so on. This would not happen if you just say, look, this is not for me, I'll just take up a mediocre job, I will settle down, write a book. There's an old rock and roll song, say settle down, write a book, and so on, right? Of course, most of us will do that, but some of us have to take that risk and fail, right? So these are the truths about science and about life and about doing things, right? Look for new things and take risks. Without risk, nothing new worthwhile would ever be done. Infosys, in fact, is a great example. Okay, many of these companies that succeeded were great examples, right? Because instead of saying, look, here was, Narayan Murthy, here were all the founders of Infosys, and they said, look, they could have gotten a job. They were the first batch of IT graduates that were coming out of the university at that time, right? So if they could get a job, if they had gotten a job, where would they be now, right? Where would Infosys be? More importantly, where would all these tens of thousands of jobs that were created by Infosys, where would that be, right? So, well, somebody has to create jobs for all of us here, and why not one of us actually do that, right? And I'm sure that each one of us is capable of doing that, of being Narayan Murthy, of having an Infosys. It's just a question of having faith, of having confidence, and taking risks. Yeah, so please, all of you remember it from 2 years from now, at least until tomorrow. Right? You can remember tomorrow, then that's good. So this is what we call innovation. Right? So innovation is about converting your knowledge into money. Invention is different. A lot of people say, oh, it's very innovative, it's very inventive, but invention and innovation are two different things. Invention basically means that while you generate new something, a device, a knowledge, something like that. Innovation is using that device or knowledge while you create a new business or new opportunity for the society, right? And this is how basically do that. So I'm sure one of these years, one of these days, that you would be a strong part of innovation, not just invention. Right? So invention only goes that far, which means that I've created new knowledge, I've created a new product. But that unless that product gets into market, gets exploited commercially and so on, there's no innovation. Another aspect we want to talk about, innovations are not all high-tech. Innovations are not all done only by graduates of Mayo College or IITs or these great scientists and so on. Actually, India is a very diverse country. So it's the diversity which is important. Right, so it is very, you need all kinds of products in India. There are people who live on 30 rupees a day, and there are people who spend 3 lakhs a day, rupees, right? So you need different kind of innovations and you need different kind of products. So this is what is called grassroots innovation. Inclusive, frugal means cheap, it means relevant. Right, so you need innovations of that kind for our farmers, for women in rural areas, for children, for students and so on. So basically, see, a lot of people think that you have to be highly educated to have innovation, but that is not true. So every high school student sitting here, even 6th standard student sitting here can be very innovative, but we don't emphasize that in the classroom and in the teaching, right, as to what we are capable of. So we have done this experiment. The experiment where you involve the school students from class 6 to class 10 in order to basically push on that innovative aspect in informal education. And so we must remember that even those people who are poor, people who are not educated, are a huge source of innovations. They know what their problems are. We may not know people who are dwelling in cities, we don't know what the problems of rural population is unless we connect with them. They know it's a minds at the margins of society or economy are not marginal minds. You know, so to understand actually how 90% people live in this country, you have to get out, just like looking at nature. You have to make friends with those people, talk to them, say what their problems are, how can they be solved. And so they what is called inclusive innovation and so on. Of course, you know, I keep saying children are not just saints of our sermons. I mean, all the parents keep saying, hey, don't do this, this happens, right? But they can generate very interesting ideas. I have personally seen it in action. So we have this huge program this year, which would be relevant for people sitting here, some of you, which is, here are some examples. There are about, we have collected about 2 lakh ideas from school children and farmers. There is a whole, this encyclopedia of grassroots innovation. So those of you who know Calcutta platform, for example, train station, I mean, you have to carry your bag, but you also need something to sit on. So, you make 2 in 1, for example. We are things we think about all the time. But, we don't catalog them, we have no faith in it, we don't market them, we don't go ahead and make a company. This is the difference between a youth, for example, in Boston or in Banaras. The difference is not in terms of intelligence. Difference is not in terms of education. Difference is in terms of seizing the opportunity. Having that confidence is saying, here is a great product, here is a great need. I have to, no matter what happens, I have to take a risk. I have to push it and create, opportunity and market for it. So, you understand what it is, right? There is another one. I said there are 2 lakh ideas. So, there is like Swachh Bharat, clean your campus, whole lot of people are bicycling. While you are bicycling, why not pick up actually all the trash at the same time? Also generate electricity, and do a whole lot of things. I mean, the question is, every activity we do can be combined with something else. And typically, when you are younger, you understand these problems much better than when you are grown up. I mean, when you are grown up, you understand certain kind of problems better. When you are younger, you understand these kind of problems better. I have to tell you, for example, this very exceptional 6th standard girl student that I came across in a very small town, very small town school. And we are very shy. When you are 6th standard, we are extremely shy. We don't want to speak, open up. If you ask them what is your problem, what do you think, they will not say anything. So you have to spend some time with them, make them comfortable. So I'll tell you what she told me. I said, what is your problem in the school? She said, we have this taps from which you drink water, right? I'm sure, I don't know, you have that here? You don't have that? Like a series of taps from which students drink water. She was short and she said, I cannot reach these taps for drinking water. And so what do you think we should do? She said, we should take this tap and we should tilt it. Right? So there is a pipe and there are many taps on it. So this tap would be, down there, this tap would be high. So students of different heights can actually drink from different taps. So I told the principal, he was so happy that I'll do it tomorrow. And they actually did it. And the little girl was very happy. Not only she was happy because she could drink water, she was actually happy because somebody listened to her. Right? And that she could identify a problem that all these grown-ups over 3 decades could not identify. Not only that, she could suggest a solution which is workable solution. And since then, every principal I have told this to is very ready actually to do this. He said, when you tell this, okay, there are short periods from there, tall periods from there, right? So it does not require very great depths of science and technology to actually come up with these ideas, to come up with solutions that would make a change in our country, right? That would make a change, and we really have to have that confidence to be able to do that. So now what we are doing is, here is a new scheme that we are starting this year. So it will reach out to 500,000 schools across the country, right? Which is 5 lakh schools. each school will hold an internal competition for innovative ideas. Right? So we select top 2 ideas from each school in any language, because most people can't write it in English, of course. So we write it in some language. We have created an army of people who will go through these ideas, look at the innovation in that idea, look at the creativity in that idea, look at whether it recognizes a local need and provides a solution for that local need, right? So then, starting from these 1 million ideas, top 1 million ideas which are sourced from 500,000 schools will do the competition. So you compete on district level, compete on state level, compete on national level, but first you compete with ideas. You see, we have been competing with science models, the so-called science models, and we all know that science models are bought, right? So the science models that we compete with in science fairs, you know, you would bug your parents, you would bug your teachers to create actually a science model. Maybe not in Mayo College, I was speaking of Mayo College, but in general, across the country, what we hear is that people just buy these science models and compete based on it. We don't want to do that, we want to compete on ideas. Once you have a good idea, then we'll give to top 1 lakh ideas, give 10,000 rupees each, so that idea can be converted to a model by using a workshop facility, by using mentorship, training and so on, right, motivation. So from 1 lakh ideas you make prototypes, you make models that work. Then as you go up and up, you get more and more these stakes rise higher. The top 100 students in the country will get to talk to the president and would participate in 1 week-long festival of innovations in Rashtrapati Bhavan. Rubbing shoulders with all these great, innovators, these great companies that have become $1 billion, whatever, unicorns and all kind of people. Hugely motivated, right? So, I don't know if you got anything related to this program. If not, we'll find out. But we are trying to reach a lot of these rural, semi-urban schools to see if we get the ideas, right? Let me know later whether you got anything related to this scheme going here. The top 100 students across the nation will also do a scientific Bharat. Now what does it mean, scientific Bharat? It means, you go to the top scientific labs of the country, you go to all the IITs, you go to these great places where exciting science is happening. You go in there, you look at what people do. Right? This is so motivating, I can tell you. I see so many people are so excited. Once they get into those labs, when they get into the IITs and all, once they come out, there is a transformative change. Because when we read books, this is very abstract. This is not science. When we mug up things for exam, that is not science. Nobody will be ever inspired by that science. So which is why it's very important that I think, all colleges or schools, now and then, take your students to the best of science labs which are across here. Let them interact with the scientists, let them interact with, see things. It's like nanotechnology. All this, then, it's not going to inspire anybody if you show a nanoparticle. But once you get into a lab, you see how it actually happens. You look at why it happens, how it happens, and why is it useful. That is going to be hugely inspirational. So let us connect with this nationwide program. I think that would be great. The last thing that I have learned in my short life that I can share with you is that no matter what we do, social science, no matter what we call it, and no matter what our profession is, we must have at least one thing other than our profession that we love, and whether it connects to society, whether it connects to creative art, whether it connects to something creative and fulfilling in our lives. If we don't have that, right now it's not a problem because we can play hockey, right? But as you grow a little bit older, right, you have a job 9 to 5 or whatever, these things, the life would become very boring. So unless we have an abiding interest in something other than what actually feeds us, right? Man doesn't live only by money. So therefore we have this hobby which is very deep, which is not really a hobby but a dedication, we cannot hope to be happy people. Right now, of course, we have a lot of activities, so we are happy, until we are teenagers and so on, then to college and beyond that. So it's good to actually cultivate that deep interest now. After that, it will be too late. To give you an idea, here is my deep interest, is to make sketches sitting in a meeting like this. Right? So I always use my time very wisely. I have been to many conferences, workshops, meetings, and when I do that, then I make sketches. Right? For example, some of which are shown over here. Until now, I have collected, for example, 1,000 plus art sketches and so on, which I have made sitting exactly where you are sitting now. Right? Because this thing gets very boring. I mean, sometimes you relate to them, sometimes you don't relate to them, but at least I relate to myself, and that is very important. And so we should have all of that. So thank you very much. I'll stop there. I've told you what my concerns are, but that may be a very little value for you. Anyway, at this point in life. So I think we should have some serious discussion about what is it that interests you. Right? What is it that ticks you? What is it that keeps you going, so to say?
So actually you talked about the field of research right now, but at the same time, if someone wants to take up that field, there are not many institutions in the country that provide the proper training or guidance that you say for this sector. There are some like superior institutions, but not everyone is capable of getting into those institutions, and not everyone gets the chance to study in those like top universities or top colleges that provide research as a training or as an undergraduate course. Not every college can do that.
So actually, first let me clarify that everything I said, okay, no matter what you would do, become a manager, you have your company, a startup, technology driven company, or otherwise like a training driven company. No matter what you do in life, okay, what we actually talked about is agnostic to that, is independent of that. This has to do with the fact that you should be able to think on your own very clearly, figure out things on your own, not give undue importance to what is in the books and what people tell you. Of course, these things are very important for research, I think. But I'm not limiting it to only that. I'm saying, if you look at the example of highly successful people, no matter in what walk of life, in what sphere of activity, they will all have this quality. For example, of independence, fierce independence, risk-taking, not averse to being a failure, not fearful of being ridiculed, and so on. Not under peer pressure, not otherwise, right? So all of these things that we discuss, of course, we discuss with respect to science and research, but these are things, they are logical things which are actually valid no matter what you do. Second part of your question that you said is, not all of us will do research, and not all of us will get to the institutions which are great in research. I completely agree with that. Not all of us will do that, and we should not actually all of us do that. Come back to the point of diversity, right? If we are all doing research, then nobody is converting research into opportunities. So we must have a balance between people who generate new knowledge, and the people who generate new knowledge must have these qualities, right? Profound thinking, deep thinking, risk-taking, being excited, being fired and all that, right? At the same time, not everybody should do research, clearly. I mean, that would be such a stupid society bound to failure, right? It's not. Everybody has a different goals, has a different personality, different capability, different so on, right? Which is very good, and this is what we mean by diversity and bringing balance. So some people, generate knowledge, other people consume that knowledge, and therefore generate resources to generate new knowledge. So this is the cycle of knowledge that we talk about.
This is the truth of the society right now, that in our nation, everyone is looking forward to getting jobs as an engineer or as a doctor, which get along with the society as well.
Yeah.
Not everyone is interested in research, but being interested in research, those who are interested in research, the few of them, as I mentioned, they do not get proper opportunities in the nation, and therefore some of them, those who are good, move out of the nations for that research. And those particular researchers or interested researchers move out in other countries, and then they settle there, not developing the nation, rather going there. So, sir, being interested in research, it would be, for me as a student, it would have been very helpful if there were enough opportunities in the nation itself, enough universities giving the course with good facilities and proper training, that I could have done research, staying here rather than going out.
Not everybody will do research. Not everybody will do great research, or useful research, or breakthrough research, or profound research. I agree with all of that. It doesn't happen in any society, right? It doesn't happen. But those of who want to take up research, they of course, should do these things. That's what we're talking about. So second thing is, it is no problem if not everybody will do research or great research. Perfectly okay, right? We have already addressed that particular issue, right? We need diversity, some people will do research, others will convert research into opportunities, right? The second issue that we talked about, that is, now, is that your concern, or do you think that's a fact? I mean, that you would not get, that in India, for example, you would not have great opportunities for research.
That is a concern because they somehow demotivate.
No, so I'm saying, do you think it's a statement of fact, or it's a concern that you would like to be addressed? Or you think you've already made up your mind, it's a fact that a person would not get good training here, or cannot do good science?
Sir, it is partially a concern, and on the basis of what I see as a student of 12th right now, for my career option, it somehow demotivates me and makes me think that it would be better to move with the flow rather than going out.
No, sure. So you see, demotivation must be based on facts. Now, it cannot be based on hearsay. Now, we go back to that point. It doesn't matter how many people told you that this is not possible. Let me tell you, a lot of people, it's perfectly okay if somebody lives and works in this country or elsewhere. We live in a free country. So people decide, they want to work here, they want to work somewhere else. Perfectly okay, right? But there are certain aspects. So it doesn't matter how many people tell you that you cannot do great things here. That would not be a fact. Okay. And a lot of other people, the reason that people live somewhere else has less to do with the fact that you cannot do great, whether you can or cannot do great things here. It has more to do with the fact that life somewhere else may be easier. Right? These are two different things, and people have to decide where is the more weightage, right? But after all, there are a lot of people who work for you by being here. If they were not here, if they did not work very hard being here, then you would not have the life that you are having now, right? So, well, it is not a question of being a hero. It's not a question that, look, I will not sacrifice and let other people, sacrifice and so on. It's not a question of being a hero. It's a question of saying, look, some of us will stay here and work, others will go somewhere else, wherever their fate takes them, right? But this is not a reason. They were, let's say, early part of the century and a little bit later, in the 40s, 50s, India had no resources, right? It was completely cut off from the rest of the world. There were no emails, nothing, those things. Nobody knows what's happening. Science sitting here. But that is the time we produce the best of scientists in this country. Not just best of scientists, the best of thinkers, right? So what do you think has happened since then? It has nothing to do with the fact that you may not have resources. It has nothing to do with the fact that, it has to do with the fact that you are committed, that you have the fire in the belly. Now, if people start with the assumption that nothing is possible, then you will get what you ask. And this is what we are getting, society as a whole. Okay, I have not seen one person who has sincerely tried and not succeeded. Right? So, this is of course a personal choice. but one cannot actually go about creating this myth and distributing this myth, saying that nothing great is possible here, right? This is actually not factual. And to justify my behavior or my choice of going somewhere else, I should not spread these rumors here. That's the point, right? There are great things which are happening in this country, and that is why I said that all the students in high school, they ought to go out. They ought to go out. They go to IIT. They go here, there. They look at what is happening. You would be fired. I'm not fired from the job. You get fired. You say, hey, this is so great, and I can do it here, right? If you wanted to do it, right? In fact, we are starting out with a new concept this year, which is called scientific social responsibility. Just like corporate social responsibility. What does it mean? It means that the people who have the knowledge and resources ought to reach out to all the stakeholders of science and technology in whichever way, which includes, let's say, school students, right? So if I'm running this big lab in nanotechnology and IIT, now it is my scientific social responsibility to reach out to you and fire you, right? I may not always be successful, right? But unless we try, unless we say, look, this is something as a scientist I need to do, right? We will never be successful, right? And actually nothing succeeds like positivity. It's very important to remember, if you talk to 10 negative people, at the end of the day, you would be completely gone out of energy, right? Do not keep friends who suck energy out of you, who talk negatively, who say, well, this country nothing can happen, in this place nothing can happen, hey, what are you doing research is nothing, right? Hey, don't do this stupidity. Don't listen to these people. You make up your own mind. Whatever decision that you arrive at yourself is the only thing that matters. That's the only thing you will live with for the rest of your life. It's not those people who would live your life and decisions. They will not disappear in 2 years, 5 years, having conditioned you, right? So never ever fall in that trap of having energy vampires for your friends. Nothing succeeds like positivity.
Really, it was a very thought-provoking and informative talk. I just want to ask, in today's scenario, everybody wants a very pure and clean water to drink, right? So it is said that if we use nanomaterials or nanoparticles, you work on it also.
Correct.
Maybe dope, undope is sparging oxide or titanium dioxide particles. If you throw in a pond, lake or river, the water gets purified. It will degrade the pesticides, chemicals, whatever contaminants it present in the presence of sunlight, it will degrade it.
Yeah.
How far it is possible in our country to purify the water, and is the government is doing anything regarding this? Just I want to ask it.
First of all, most of the conflicts going in the future would occur because of the resources, and one of the resources being water. The availability of water per capita in India has been going down at such an alarming rate, and the water which is available, the quality of that water, the degradation of the quality of that water, equally alarming, right? And it's not just India, many countries, because per capita consumption of water has been going up exponentially with so-called development, right? So these are the dimensions of the problem. Water that we consider to be common commodity is not going to be like that. Today itself, you go to interior of a city, people actually wait to get water in long lines. Maybe they get 2 hours a day. Things are not rosy, right? They are going to get much worse. Be prepared for it. Another dimension of water is, you see, let's say for a farmer, there is no price on water, right? Because they take water out from the ground and it's free. So therefore, you use it in a way which is hugely wasteful. There is no, you don't need to conserve water. As long as you don't pay for it, one use it. Now, I don't know how many of you know how much water does it take to produce 1 kilogram of cotton. Make a guess. Anybody know? You want to grow 1 kilogram of cotton, how much of water is needed for it. And don't forget, 80% of cotton we export, which basically means whatever water you used for that cotton is a virtual export, but without nobody paying for it. Right? Now this is a water we do not have. Right? Remember. I'll come to another aspect of water, a few more aspects of water which are very important and interesting. But anybody knows 1 kg of cotton, how much water does it need? You think, I'm sure it must be in your, some book related to agriculture chapter, right? It takes 22,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of cotton, right? Now this is a water we do not have, right? Don't forget. Another aspect of water is the water purification. What is the technology we use for purifying water? Any of our friends in white shirts or blue shirts, can they answer? How do you purify water? What is the technology? What is it called? So RO is called reverse osmosis, right? It is the worst technology for purifying water. The reason it is worst technology is because you take half the water, you increase the salinity of that water, and then throw it down back in the gutter, right? Now this is water we do not have, and it gets degraded. So that water, partially good water you took, now half of it increased salinity, and moreover is down the drain. And once it's down the drain, its quality is going to degrade to the sink and all that. Now we have lost it. Also, it requires a lot of energy to purify water through RO. But this is what we use in every home. Some of the Bollywood actresses, they vouch for it. RO technology and so on, right? So now the next question is, do we have a competing technology for purifying water? No, which is not wasteful, which is not stupid, which is not mindless, so on. Yes, we do. So there are, these nanomaterials, but you see, where nanomaterials? There are a whole lot of things which actually do this job. The problem is, for companies, it's much easier to push and sell RO than actually to sell this. Because people want their problems solved either by government or by company. But people don't want to actually make any contribution in their own contribution, even if it is very small, in using appropriate technology, which may require for you to spend 1 hour a week, to actually get it running, right? So the problem here is not the availability of technology, but scale up and penetration in society. That's why I'm saying not all problems are problems of technology. The problems are their acceptance in the society, their use in the society, their commercialization, their scale up. Those are actually much bigger problems than having the right technology, having right policies and so on. Right? You can clearly understand that suppose you had a policy which says, look, what is going to cost this much? Then everything you do in life is going to change. Right? Now, instead of growing cotton, you would grow something else, because it will not be profitable to grow cotton. So, it's not a question of science or technology, it's a question of how society thinks about it.
If we inject nanoparticles in a body, can it clean the blood and cure the cancer patients also?
Yeah. Many different ways of curing cancer. Much of this work is right now on research level. But I'll tell you what basically how nanoparticles can cure cancer. So let's think about, one of the ways to treat cancer is through hypothermia. So you heat up locally that place where you have tumor, so the cells get deactivated because of heat. So now if you got these nanoparticles, which if through a UV or IR or some radiation, they get heated. And these particles, they preferentially collect in the tumor, right? then let's say these particles get in the tumor, they have high concentration of particles in the tumor, then you heat it locally, then that tumor will get destroyed, for example. But also these nanoparticles can be loaded with a drug, a cancer drug. And because you see what happens is in the traditional therapy for cancer, you give the anti-cancer drug, but it goes everywhere in the body. So I make this joke that sometimes cancer treatment kills the patient first and the tumor next, right? Because you see it's very toxic. These chemotherapy and stuff, they're very toxic and it goes everywhere in the body, not only in the tumor side. So now what we want is that we want this medicine, this therapy only to go in tumor. So this is possible by nanoparticles that target a particular cell site. So in these nanoparticles, you put actually some molecule which recognizes tumor molecules and cells, or the molecules which are the cells of tumor. So these particles will go only bind there. Right? So there are different ways in which nanotechnology helps fighting different diseases.